So we're going to take a look at reading and writing inequalities. There's a few things you need to know before you start this, and that's your 4 inequality symbols. So the first one we have is this one here, which means greater than or more than. Then you have one which looks very similar but with a little line underneath, and it means greater than or equal to. So it can be greater than, more than, but also equal to. Then we have two others, so we have less than, and finally we have one very similar, it's less than, but also there's a line underneath, so it's less than or equal to. And you would need to understand those 4 symbols and be able to read them before you can do inequalities. So if we look at our first example here, this here tells us that x is greater than or equal to the number 5. So x, some unknown number, is greater than or equal to 5. So that means that the number could be 5, it could be 6, it could be 7, or any number bigger than that. So any number 5 or bigger is included in this inequality. Now, if the underline hadn't been there, so if this little symbol here hadn't been there, included in it, that would mean that x is greater than 5, so we couldn't include 5 in the answer. It would have to say that x would be maybe 6, 7, 8, 9, or 10, etc. So on our second example, we have a double inequality here. So we've got x in the middle, and then we're told if you read to the other direction, so it really says that 6 is less than x. Or if you read from the middle outwards, x is greater than 6. So if you read it backwards, it means x is greater than 6. And then if you read it back to the middle and go x is less than or equal to 8. So really that means that if x is a bigger number than 6, so it would have to be 7. It can't be 6 because there's no line underneath that. So 7, and then it could also be 8 because we're told here that x is less than or equal to 8. So the only 2 numbers that we can have there is 7 and 8. Now, sometimes inequalities are drawn on a number line, and then you have to write down what the inequality is for that. So we've got the diagram here in example 3, and it's showing us that x is less than 3. So we've got our 3 here, and then it's going down this direction. So it's 3 or less than. This coloured in part means that it can be 3. So you'd write that down. Start with your x always first. So x is, and it's less than, so our symbol for less than looks like this, but also equal to because it's coloured in, so less than or equal to 3. Now, the other one we have here then tells us that actually x is greater than 12. It's going in the direction of the bigger numbers. It's not coloured in, it's an empty dot, so that means it is just greater than, not equal to. So that means this one here, we'd write, start with our x is greater than, we don't underline it because it's not equal to, greater than 12. So any number bigger than 12 it could actually be. And that starts above the 12, but that means it could actually be 12.1 if we were talking about decimal numbers here. So if it depends whether you're asking for an integer or a decimal number. Alright, so we've got a few examples of exam questions here where you could be asked to read an inequality. So our first one here is telling us that n is, if we read from the middle, n is greater than, so the big side comes first, n is greater than or equal to -2, but n, if you go back to the middle, is also less than 5. So because there is a little underline underneath it beside the 2, that means that we can include the -2. So -2 is the first number, then -1, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, but we can't include 5 because it says n is less than 5, so we can't include 5 in that. So those are the possible integer values that we can have for n. Let's take a look at the next one. If you want to pause at any point here and try and answer this yourself, and then you can unpause it and check whether you've actually got it right or wrong. So for the next one here, it says write down all the integer values of x that satisfies this inequality. So what it's telling us here is that if you start in the middle, x is, and the big side comes first, so x is greater than or equal to -2, or if you read it from the left, -2 is less than or equal to x, and then x is less than 3. So basically what it's telling us here is that x is between -2 and 3. We can include the -2 because this side's underlined. We cannot include the 3 because it is not underlined. The inequality is not underlined. So -2, -1, 0, 1, and 2, and we can't include the 3 because it is less than 3, not less than or equal to 3. Okay, one final question here for us, and we're told again that n, if we start in the middle, is less than 4, but n then, if we start back to the middle, is greater than or equal to -1. So basically n is between -1 and 4. We can include -1, we cannot include 4 because 4 is not underlined. So starting off with -1, then we would have 0, and then we'd have 1, 2, 3, and we can't include 4 because there is not an underline underneath the inequality there, so it's just less than 4.